Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday, July 8th, North Middlesex Council meeting. Once again, we're holding electronically due to the COVID pandemic. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Roll call, Councillor Hemming is unable to attend tonight. This disclosure of pecuniary interest, if anybody has any, please raise your hand. And if you do, I would ask you to email them to our clerk so that you have it in writing, correct, Jackie?
Yes.
To go forward. All right. So hearing none, minutes of the previous meeting from June 17th, 2020, regular minutes. Any business arising, errors or omissions? Anyone? None. So moved by Councillor Moyer, seconded by Councillor McClinchy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. We need a motion to go into the Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Nickel, Councillor Keogh. All in favor? Carried. Well, there you're back, Joan. Okay, so Committee of Adjustment, we have it's for Jeremy Mako, and it's a request to amend the parkland dedication condition imposed on consent B16-2019 11734 Petty Street. And Stephanie, I believe you're going to speak on that.
I am, thank you. So as committee will recall, consent B16-2019, which proposed to sever 3 residential lots from a parcel known municipally as 11734 Petty Street, was conditionally approved on December 4th, 2019. And on June 3rd, 2020, North Middlesex Council approved a recommendation by staff to update the fees and charges bylaw to have a flat fee for cash in lieu of parkland dedication of $1,200 per residential lot created through the consent application process. Subsequently, the owner of the subject lands has requested that condition number 8 of consent B16-2019 be amended to reflect the new required parkland dedication fee, as opposed to the previous required amount of 5% of the value of each of the severed lots. Given the large size of the estate lots, they're approximately 3 acres each, staff understand the request to amend the parkland dedication from the 5% of the value of the land to a flat rate of $1,200, as it will be significantly less expensive for the applicant to complete the consent application process. The applicant is within their right to request changes to the condition of the consent application. And with the fees and charges bylaw being updated recently, the new flat rate of $1,200 per severed lot is what should be applied when reviewing the request to amend the conditions of the consent application. And so it is recommended that the conditions of consent B16-2019 be amended as recommended, and that a notice respecting the changes be circulated to prescribed persons and public bodies in accordance to the Planning Act. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. So questions from council? Any questions? Councillor Nickel?
Yeah, how many other properties, when we're looking at this going forward, how many other applications would this affect? If somebody else decided to do the same thing, how many applications do we have coming forward that this would affect?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I believe there is just one outstanding residential consent in Elsa Craig that would be impacted by this.
Thank you, Stephanie.
And after this point, it would just go automatically to the base rate, correct?
To the mayor, correct, yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Nickel. Discussion? In favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks.
We need a motion to go out of Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Nickel, Councillor Moyer, all in favor? Carried. Back into regular meeting. We're a couple of minutes early right now, right?
They are waiting. I can let them in now.
Oh, they are waiting? Okay, if thanks, see you, Stephanie. If Aqua is ready, then we do have our first delegation is Aqua presentation for the first quarter financials, and it's Jackie and I believe Rod are coming in, aren't they? There's Rod. Hi, Jackie. Hi, Rod.
Hello.
Hello.
Who would like to start?
Well, I can start first. Do you have the performance report up, or am I going to?
I think we all do. We all have it in front of us, so it's separate on the side, I believe.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, Your Worship. Do you want me to start, Mayor Rob? Okay.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Good evening, Council, Worship, and municipal staff. In front of you, you will have a performance report for the year 2019. And Aqua has outlined different parameters throughout the report. And there's the green, which is results are positive and on target. Yellow means results are in range but not yet achieved. And red would be results are off target and action is needed. If you look at the compliance summary report number 1, we met all water regulatory requirements for water, wastewater. There was 0 boil water advisories, and there was an inspection report, and we didn't receive 100%, so that's why that is yellow. We received 98.77 on that, so it's still great. And then 100% conformance with the DWQMS. On the health and safety, there was 0 lost time incidents. There were 92 reported near misses, and that is recorded throughout the agency. So it's just, we did have a goal of less than 80, but there was 92 reported. And the staff had all completed their safety training requirements. For operational excellence, both the water and wastewater treatment facilities operated within the plant capacity, and Aqua worked with the municipality to reduce energy consumption on the water and wastewater treatment. For the asset protection, for the 2019 year, there was 475 work orders completed. And there was preventative work orders, corrective, emergency, and capital. And of the capital projects, the first one on the list there was provided alternate water supply, and that is when Lake Huron had their shutdowns, and there was Aqua and the municipality arranged to have the trucks haul the water to for the Elsa Craig and the Park Hill distribution. There was also generator repairs at the West William booster and high lift pump for the West Williams booster, as well as the PRV for Fern Hill Chamber, and they installed the gate valve at Bedford. And these are just major capital items. There's a lot of other capital that did go on in the municipality. The next one is the water loss, and the municipality and Aqua worked very closely and a lot of long hours last year, and they're continuing this year to identify issues in the system and get them repaired. They have had great success, and I think they were out last week working on that a little bit longer and more last week. On the last page of the document is community involvement. And one thing that Aqua really strives is getting involved in the municipalities that we work in. And that is through like water festivals or the Christmas parades or different activities going on in the municipality. So we like to, be involved and provide an update. And I guess at this time, if there's any questions on the report, I'm happy to answer them. And if I can't, I'm sure Rod will be able to.
Okay, questions on that report so far? Deputy Mayor Cornelison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I have a question on regarding trucking water. On March 10 and 11th, it identifies here the water was trucked to the Denfield area because of a shutdown. So when the tower is constructed in Elsa Craig, will that eliminate that need, or will that still continue to be required to have water trucked to Denfield?
I'm going to pass
I
that
could-
on to Jonathan, I guess.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
go
do
ahead.
it.
Go ahead.
We brought a report to you guys in December of 2018 to extend the water main from the pumping station in Lucan to
Yep.
essentially Maple Lodge. That's out for tender and actually closes tomorrow at noon for the contracting. That will shore that system up.
So if Lake Huron water system is shut down, then that water no longer needs to be trucked there?
To Denfield, no. Once that water main's installed, we won't need to truck water to Denfield.
Okay, thank you.
And just on top of that, that source is going to be coming from the Lucan Tower then, correct?
Yeah, like backed by the Lucan system,
Backed
yes.
by the system, backed by
Yes.
the system, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not the Ells Creek Tower that's doing that one, but
Right.
it is at least solved. Okay, other questions? No other questions? Go ahead.
I will pass it on to Rod to
right.
talk about the operational reports.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Rod.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to start off with the distribution system report. I'm going to flip over to page number 2, and I'll just talk about the highlights of the report. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask away. Page 2, we'll start off with the operational description. Page number 3, we start off with compliance and exceedances summary. Third-party inspections, nothing to report for the first quarter. Occupational health and safety. The COVID-19 pandemic issue was corporately brought to the attention of all Aqua staff. Precautionary protection measures were implemented at all facilities. In addition to mandatory personal protective equipment worn by operational staff, the following additional steps were taken to assure safety. Additional PPE and supplies were sourced. The frequency of the facility and vehicle cleaning and surface disinfection was increased. This was actually daily. Staff reorganization was implemented to meet social distancing requirements as well, and facility access to required contractors or delivery personnel was closely monitored, and with our policies and procedures in effect as well. Other than that, there was no other health and safety issues identified for the first quarter. We have general maintenance and plant activities listed. Flip to page number 4. We'll continue on with municipal work orders, locates, water turnoffs, turn-ons, and our water main and water service repairs. Alarms and call-ins starting off, but we'll flip over to page number 5. We have them listed for your review. Again, same where we have emergency locates, low pressure calls. That is listed for all your review as well. Complaints and concerns with low pressure complaint on Petty Street. This is the Shady Pines campground. Upon arrival, the operator found that the water service on the property's owner side was leaking, but it was quickly repaired and turned back on. And an operator received a call from Spills Action Center with a complaint that the manure was coming out of a field drain. So the operator dealt with that issue and forwarded that information on to the municipality as well. Page number 6, operational highlights. This is something new that we wanted to bring on board just to bring the council's attention. Peer Solutions was on site at Park Hill Reservoir to investigate into replacing the outgoing pressure switch due to last month with both duty pumps running at the same time. Normally we just have one high lift pump running, that's all that's needed. And if there was a call for a second pump, that's when it was supposed to come on. But there'll be more on the second quarter to give you an update on that. Operators conducted a trial to see if East Williams system could feed the majority of the West Williams system. Again, the idea here was just to push our system as far as we believe it could during certain situations such as water main repairs or Lake Huron shutdowns. It didn't work out the way that we wanted to, but again, this is something that we wanted to do moving forward, just to learn everything what we could about our system. We had an aqua electrician in Aramosa. We're on site at the West Williams pumping station to inspect all electrical components for future upgrades. So this was originally planned to actually have water tankers in because we were going to have to turn this station off, power it off in order to conduct an investigation on these breaker panels. But we were able to source or have the equipment and source the equipment that we needed for personal protection, so our electrician can go in and actually inspect this these breakers live. So this was a big win for us for saving some money. And then operators worked extra hours on these planned regional water supply shutdowns. Again, we're getting pretty good at them. They seem to be more often than not. But I'd like to bring this highlight to you, to council, because again, it is a lot of work working with these tankers, disinfecting all the lines from the tanker to the hydrants, taking chlorine residual, sampling, and all that work that comes with that. The drinking water quality management system update, again, the external audit offsite was March 24th, 0 non-conformances and 0 opportunities for improvement. So that went very well for us. And then of course, our regulatory inspections that we have listed. Is there any questions on the North Middlesex distribution system?
Any questions? No questions? Go ahead, Rod.
Okay, LC Craig, I'd like to start off on page number 2. We have capacity information. This is something new that you're going to see on this report, but I'm pretty excited about it. We have some design values and some flows right from 2016 right up to 2020. It shows the average daily flow, the percentage of average daily flow design, and of course the peak flow design as well, that you can see and kind of give you an idea of what's happening at this facility. The chart below that, I actually broke this down into the month. So, January, it says 830.75 cubic meters. This is an average daily flow. So it was a pretty wet month for the month of January. Page number 3, it's operational description. And then we'll start off with the client connection monthly report, compliance summary. William Street pump station overflow. We had an extreme rain event that occurred in the area causing widespread flooding, and the inability of the LC Craig William Street pump station to keep up with the increased flow entering the station. We followed all policies and procedures. We sampled and notified the MECP and SAC, Medical Officer of Health, and no further action was required. On page number 4, we have occupational health and safety. As I talked about before, COVID, same for our facility here in LC Craig, and there was no additional health and safety issues identified for the first quarter. Inspections, nothing from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks or the Ministry of Labor. General maintenance and plant activities are listed for your review, as well as the alarms and call-ins. The alarms and call-ins will also tie over on page 5 as well. And then we have complaints and concerns. We had one complaint or concern. It was from a resident that smelled gas in LC Craig. So we also called Union Gas to report, and we also informed the municipality as well in case they've had any calls. The performance assessment report, this is probably going to be my favorite part about this report. So I'll start off on chart 1, raw sewage monthly average daily flows in 2020 compared to 2019. So I have the design average flow, and this is the idea, just to show you kind of an idea of where we're sitting when it pertains to our 1,210 cubic meters per day. I'll flip over to page number 6, where I have table 1, raw sewage sample results for 2020. And I have all these parameters, BOD, TKN, TP, and TSS, and I'll describe those to you further in the report. But TKN, total Kehigel nitrogen, you'll see that our design value below is at 36, and we reached a 36.2, so we're just slightly over. But the good thing is that the ECA does not stipulate a raw sewage compliance value. So I didn't have to report anything to the MECP or SAC, Spills Action Center. Table 2, effluent sample results. Again, I have all these parameters listed on the top. I'll go through them here later in the report, but I wanted to point out specifically at the bottom where it has ECA objective and ECA limits. And if I exceed those limits, that's where I have to report it to the MECP. I'm going to flip over to page 7 on chart 2. We have the average monthly effluent. So this is carbonaceous biochemical oxygen demand. We have objective of 5 and a limit of 10. And you'll see that on the bar graph of where we've been coming in from 2020 to compared to 2019. Chart 3 is the total suspended solids. Objectives are 5, limits are 10, and you'll see where we come in below the objective. Go on to page 8, chart number 4. The average monthly effluent total phosphorus. Our objective is 0.3 and our limit is 0.5. And you'll see that we are just slightly over our objectives in the summer months. Chart number 5, total ammonia and nitrogen. Our objectives 1.3 and our limit 2 to 5. And again, we're barely even coming close to our objectives. So we're doing really well. On page 9, our E. coli limits, objectives and limits. Again, we're not well below our objectives. And then lastly, I have our pH. And what's interesting about our pH is both our minimum and maximum objectives and our limits are the same value. So it's 6.5 and 8.5 for both. And we're kind of ranging around that 7 to 7, just under 7.5. Any questions regarding the LC Craig wastewater treatment report?
Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Cornelison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Yeah, on the chart 4, the TP or whatever it is in 2019, and you said it typically goes higher in the summer months. Why is that, the ammonia and nitrogen? Why does it go higher in summer months?
That's a great question. Right now, in the summer months, especially now with the last week and a half, very dry with very, very low flows. Very, very low flows. So I don't really have a lot of volume to work with.
Oh.
The other, that's part of it, but that's not the real reason. The other thing is that when it comes to our alum is a chemical that we use for phosphorus control. When we use that, when I add a chemical, it also adds an acid. When I add an acid, it reduces the pH. So that's very important when it comes to this process, because I got to be very mindful for their pH, 6.5 to 8.5. If I want to control that phosphorus and I keep lowering my pH, I could go below that 6.5. Then I'm going to be running into issues, because 5 to 6 is our natural precipitation when it comes to pH. 4 to 5 is when the fish reproductive system starts to be affected. And 3 to 4 on a pH scale is when fish start to die, adult fish start to die. The idea is with this chemical that's being injected at our facility, it's not flow paced. It's set by a dial. So for example, it's set to 6. So it doesn't matter if I have 600 cubes coming in that day, or if I have 200 cubic meters coming in that day, that alum is set for 6. Ideally, I'd like to have it flow paced, but we're looking at optimization here in the future, and that will be one of the things that we're doing. So it's very difficult for our operators to make these changes on a chemical system where it needs at least a week to 7 days, 7 to 10 days in order for that process to actually show signs of making those changes in the process. If that answers your question, Adrian.
Well, it's helpful. Thank you for that. I was wondering if it has something to do with temperature, but okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? I have one. I like this report, Rod, because it certainly gives us a much better idea what flows are and what's going on. My question to you, though, is it looks to me when I read this report and I'm looking at it that we actually would have a more efficient plant, if more homes, more flow to it. Less chemicals would be needed, and if we had more raw sewage to it. Is that right?
Through your worship, yes, it's ideally when it comes to low flows, it's what it does is it shortens that window for me to have that biological process to work at its top efficiency. So yes, volume would definitely help. Having that flow pace, it doesn't not just help with the phosphorus control to match the flow, but you're absolutely right. It would actually help with our chemical costs as well, because right now I'm injecting it, say at that 6. And whereas before it might just fluctuate with flow, and there could be some savings and some chemical costs as well.
Okay, that's good to know. To me, this really showed it a lot better than the old reports. I do appreciate this report.
Absolutely. I like this report because it really shows the efficiency of this plant. And then when something goes wrong, like let's say if I had an equipment failure, you could really see it on this report. Like it'll show it right up fairly quick.
And I think in light of the fact that, you know, what we're looking at in Park Hill and future what's happening, it's good for us to have a better understanding of what we need to do. So yeah, thank you. Any other questions on that part? Not? No, go ahead then, Rod. Go, carry on.
Okay, last one, Park Hill wastewater lagoon system. I'll flip over to page number 2, right at the start, capacity information. Again, this lagoon is totally different from our LC Craig wastewater system, where in the ECA, where this is F10 and F5 guidelines. But we have our average daily flow in cubic meters, some historical data, and then the chart below that, I kind of broke that down per month as well. We have the operational description that starts and it'll carry over on the page 3. Under compliance summary, there was no issues to report to date. Under occupational health and safety, we have the COVID listed, and there was no additional health and safety issues to report for the first quarter. No inspections from the MECP or the MOL as well. And I'll flip over to page number 4 under general maintenance and plant activities. It is listed for first quarter in our alarms and call-ins as well. Nothing to report for complaints and concerns. And then I have the performance assessment report as well. And I'll start that on page 5. So under chart 1, raw sewage monthly average daily flows. Again, I think this is a good representation of what we see at this facility. Table 1 has the raw sewage sample results. I have those parameters listed and I'll go through that later in the report. And I'll flip over on page 6. Table 2, effluent sample results for 2020. This being the first quarter, the Park Hill Lagoon is going to be representative of when we discharge. So I haven't discharged in the first quarter. We'll have see more accurate data in the second quarter. But I'll start going through these parameters on the top just to kind of give you an idea of what they're going to look like based off of 2019. Chart 2, you'll see the biochemical oxygen demand. These are our objectives and our guidelines. You'll notice that the objective is 15 milligrams per liter, our limit 25 versus LC Craig where it was 5 and 10. So a definite increase in our parameters. Chart number 3 is the total suspended solids. So I'll flip over to page number 7. You'll see the objectives and our limits. And chart 4 is our total phosphorus. And again, you'll see our objectives of 1 and our limit. Well, we don't have to worry about our limit because we never come close to our limit as our F5 guideline. So any questions on the LC Craig, or sorry, the Park Hill Lagoon operational report?
Sorry, any questions from council? Sorry, I was muted there. No, I'm not seeing any, Rod.
Well, thank you so much.
I will just a tidbit
Go ahead,
if council remembers, Rod started on March 17th, which is basically the onset of COVID with North Middlesex full time, which is why I think everybody received a chemistry lesson tonight in regards to the LC Craig plant, because Rod has really sunk his teeth into our operations. Rod speaks of optimization. We have the original engineers that designed the plant. I shouldn't say we, Rod has them coming in next Thursday. And we're going to look at power consumption, efficiencies with natural gas, and just process optimization with chemicals and so on. Rod, that's just one of the many things, but Rod's really sinking his teeth in and dialing our system, especially our facilities in right now. Appreciate it.
Yeah, very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great evening. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Rod.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jackie. Bye. Up next, I believe we're, 6:30. So presentation from Davis Martindale. It's Michael Watson, I believe, that's coming in, isn't it? And that's for the our financial statements from our auditors.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. How are you, Mike?
Not too bad yourself?
All right. If you'd like to go ahead and get started, I think we're all ready.
Okay. Now I'm just going to see if I can share the screen. No. Who is hosting? Could they make me the host so I could share my screen to show the financials?
You should have it now.
I believe so.
So if anybody has a question while this is going on, you may have to unmute yourselves and just ask it, because I can't see everyone right now.
There on my screen, I do have 5 of us along the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, but if somebody has a question, please just speak up. All right, while this is in front of us. So go ahead.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Obviously, things have changed a little bit since the year end, and this is a snapshot in time. It seems like such a long time ago now with everything that's happened in the last few months. And, you know, if I was just saying this in normal times, I'd say it was a very good year. And then the world's gone and changed a lot since then. And, you know, we are fortunate in a lot of ways that we did have a strong year going into this. And the municipality is you know, very strong from a financial aspects. Overall, it's up this year about $1.32 million if we look at this line here, which is a health line, which is your net financial assets. That's basically financial assets you have less financial liabilities you have. So that's always a good indication as to whether that number is positive or whether that number is negative. And when it's positive, it's a good thing, and when it's growing, that's a good thing as well, because it does mean that, you know, you are in a better position than you were last year. Once again, this year, based on once the financial statements are accepted, we are in a position to issue a clean audit opinion for this year. The level of precision this year on the general financial statements is $250,000. That's same as last year. So no issues from that perspective. When we look through at the overall increases year over year, we do note that our cash position is up this year. We're up $1.23 million in cash this year over last year. And as we go through, we'll see where that increase comes from, but that's a very strong position to be going into, especially with the current times. One of the things we always do look at is our tax receivable. Tax receivable is up this year over last year. It's up about 27% or $190,000. So that is always one of the areas that we do want to watch to make sure that's not growing uncontrollably, and that we are doing everything we possibly can to collect that. Almost half of that balance is owed by 16 properties. And so a number of those properties at year end had been put in for tax sale. But that's definitely one area to be watching as we go through, because with current times, that's definitely going to be harder for people to make payments and what have you. So we definitely want to make sure we're managing our receivables appropriately as we go through. Long-term receivables, that number is down year over year, as it should be. The majority of that is the sewer debentures that were done years ago. So we continue to collect those on an annual basis. So that's down 46,000 for sewer debentures, and also in there is the tile loans. Those are almost at the end of their the current ones. So they were down $21,000 this year over last year on that. So when we go down into our financial liabilities, we do see a pretty big decrease in our accounts payable and accrued liabilities. It's down $255,000 this year over last year. A lot of that is just timing, depending on what projects we have on go at the end of the year and what have you, and some of the timing of when we pay some of our invoices. One of the big notable ones this year is policing costs are $82,000 lower this year at year end in our payables than they were last year. And we also had some projects last year that were in there that we don't currently have this year. So most of that is just due to our ebbs and flows of our nature of our payables and what have you from year to year. When we go down a little bit further, we see this big section called deferred revenues. And we have deferred revenues from 3 different aspects. Deferred revenues, the first one, which is linked to note 6, is various different grants that we had come in before the end of the year that we hadn't got a chance to spend. And those grants have specific requirements in order to spend them. And so there was some Ontario Main Street revitalization grants for $33,000, Play It Forward for $1,750, OCIF grant for infrastructure improvements for $170,000, and Ontario Cannabis grant for $15,000. One of the items that Ms. Bally had hoped to keep in there was the $550,000 that we received from the revitalization development grant. And because of the nature of that grant, it wasn't required specific expenditures for it. So it didn't meet the criteria for being deferred. So that's actually in our surplus for the current year. So it did get recognized as revenue. It's in our surplus, but it's still there available for us to use next year. It just will draw down our surplus that we have carried forward going forward. And it's just the rules with regards to deferred revenue into what criteria we have to have in order to defer it. And unfortunately, there wasn't enough external restrictions on it for us to defer that grant. Gas tax does have a lot of external restrictions on what we can use that for. It has to be approved projects. So we do see that amount grow this year over last year by $429,000. And then we also have development charges. These are specific charges charged to property owners and what have you as they're doing various different building permits and what have you. And so that is up slightly over last year as well. As we continue going forward on an annual basis, we continue to pay down some of our long-term debts that we took out over the years. That is down $356,000 this year over last year, with $104,000 being paid down on the arena expansion, $187,000 on the county library loan, $42,000 for the Elsie Craig Nairn sewers, and $23,000 on the tile loans and what have you. So that's great to see those going down. So that's our net financial assets. And then we get into our non-financial assets. And our biggest non-financial asset is one of these things that they made us set up years ago, tangible capital assets. And we do see overall a decrease in our tangible capital assets this year of $537,000. That's primarily because the amortization for the year, based on our amortization rates, was more than what we actually spent on new projects during the year. So additions this year came in at $1,317,000, and amortization was $1,805,000. So there was a little bit of an offset there in those two items. Some of the big acquisitions this year, we acquired some land purchases this year for $173,000, building and facility additions of $67,000, equipment additions $578,000, new vehicles for $321,000. Road work of capital nature was $89,000, and bridge and other structures for $104,000. Also, when we were renewing some of our fleet and some of our equipment, we did have some disposals. So we disposed of a net $48,000 worth of net book value of assets. But the great news was we got $94,000 for them. So we had a gain of $46,000 on the disposal of those items. So that was great to see. Any questions on basically our scorecard at December 31st, 2019? As I said, overall, our numbers are up year over year, and that's great to see that from a strength perspective.
Okay, any questions from council? I'm not hearing any, Mike.
No questions, Mayor.
Sorry?
No questions, Mayor. I can see everybody on my screen.
Oh, okay. Mike, I just wanted to, you're saying that we're going to see that 550,000 of our surplus is going to be from that grant, for that grant.
Correct.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
Just confirming that. Thank you.
So one of the things we did build into these statements and the surplus statements was we saw that on June 3rd, council did pass a motion to move some surplus, to allocate some of the surplus into reserves of 798,000. So that's already included in our numbers.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yep.
And let's see if I can get over to the next page here. So I'm going to stop. I'll go over this briefly. I want to go more in detail with this once we get to the surplus schedule, just because it'll show you more between the various different departments and what have you that we have. But one of the things to note when we look at this overall is one item is that we do have some growth in our taxation revenue. So taxation revenue is up 9% year over year. And that's based on a 1.65% increase in our rates that we set this year versus last year. The majority of the growth came from a 10.96% increase or a $182 million increase in our assessment. So based on what MPAC gave us, our assessment's up $182 million. So that's where most of the increase is coming, is due to growth in the value of the properties in the municipality as opposed to an increase in our taxation rates. Also, when we're looking at the revenues, we do see some other items that are ups and downs throughout the year. Our user fees are up this year over last year. The main increase in the user fees is $103,000 increase in water revenue, $40,000 from building permits, and the other big one was our solar lease came in at $65,000 this year versus last year, so it's up $51,000 over last year. So that's a nice little revenue generator for us. So we do see some increase in our user fees from that point. When we get to government grants, they are down $567,000 year over year. As we've known for the last number of years, we do see every year a decrease in our OMPF grant. It's down $242,000 this year over last year. We did have increase in other grants and government small office supports are up $453,000, primarily due to the municipal affairs and housing modernization grant of $550,000 coming through on the government grants piece this year. But we did see a decrease. The big decrease we have in the grants is a decrease of $232,000 in our municipal drain grants. So last year, we filled out a lot of our municipal drain work last year, and we're able to get the grants back in. With the timing of the work being done this year, we haven't got to the point of billing it out, so we haven't got the application in for the municipal grants yet for that piece of it. So that's something that will come through next year. And this is kind of an ups and down. It goes up and down from year to year, and so that's not unusual to see that. We also last year had some infrastructure Ontario grants, about $404,000 last year that we didn't have this year as well. And last year in that number, we also had $101,000 spent of our gas tax because we had an approved project last year and we didn't have any of those projects this year. So it's kind of usual from year to year to have that government grant line up and down depending on the number of projects and the funding coming through for that. So that's not atypical to see that down from one year to the next. When I go down to expenditures, one of the things that I noted when I looked at expenditures is it looks like we had a very large change in our expenditures year over year, with them being up $1,527,000 over last year. But the main part is in our planning and development, that number is up $1,473,000 over last year. So all these other items up here are only up $53,000 over last year, which is way below the rate of inflation from year to year. So it just shows you how well the municipality is doing in cost control from year to year and what have you. So that's great to see. And the planning and development, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. The primary reason for that is due to the municipal drains that were undertaken this year. Okay. So based on this overall, we have a lower annual surplus this year than last year. And we'll talk about that when we get into the overall surplus schedule later on. Any questions with regards to our statement of financial activities?
Yeah, I actually have a question, Mayor Rob, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. My question is on the tax increase in revenue. when you said there's a significant increase in that, is that attributed to the increase in farmland or just generic across all properties?
Generically across all properties, it's up $182 million, but there is a significant increase in farmlands, because if there wasn't a significant increase in farmlands, we would have seen overall taxation revenue would have grown sizably more, because we did have a 1.65% rate increase, but we're only up 9%, and we had 11% increase in our assessment value. So that tells me that our majority of that was the properties that are less than 100% paying tax on it dollar for dollar. So it is primarily, a lot of that is in the farmland side of things. And just give me 1 second here, and I kind of give you. Just trying to see if I can see on here, and unfortunately I can't see on this one schedule how much the growth was in the farmland. But our farmland is now up to, $1,283,920,000 for farmlands full.
Okay.
This is the MPAC assessment for it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So that continues to grow year over year.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on that
Any
statement?
other questions from anyone? Hearing none. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, we'll go over to the next one. So the next one here, this is kind of how we pretty much come back to the cash basis, getting rid of some of the accruals that have been done for financial reporting purposes. And this is where we see, we take in what we spend on capital assets for the year of $1,317,000. We back out the amortization for the year. We take in changes in prepaid expenditures, gain loss on disposal assets, and proceeds from those. And so overall, we see the net increase in financial asset that we talked about previously coming down to it. So this pretty much brings you back to more of the cash basis of looking at what the impact of the current year was. When we get rid of all those accounting smoke and mirrors that make it hard to understand these statements. The next schedule over is kind of shows our inflows and our outflows of cash for the year. So we talked earlier about the fact that we had an increase this year of $1.2 million in our cash balances. And basically from operating activities, so our day-to-day operations, we generated $2.7 million of cash this year. We used $1.3 million of cash for buying tangible capital assets. We used $356,000 for paying down long-term debt. We got $68,000 from being repaid on long-term receivables, and that's how we end up with the increase of cash, which is quite consistent with last year as well. We were up $1.5 million last year. We're up $1.2 million this year, and that's just allowing you to build your reserves, put money back aside, so that when you actually need the money down the road, it's available for you to do those projects. Okay. Any questions on that schedule? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bear with me as I try to switch over to the surplus schedule. And hopefully everybody can see that. I know it's a little bit on the small side as we try to get things in. So basically what we've done here is this kind of breaks it down. The first column here, this is our general revenue and expenditures. So basically this starts out with taxation revenue, takes into account user charges for non-water, sewer, municipal drain amounts, and then takes in provincial grants, federal grants, other sources of income. And then it's your main operating costs coming through here. And so when we go down through there, we see that our excess in our general fund for the current year before transfers to reserves and paying for capital assets was $3,744,000 surplus there. And then from that, we took $2,394,000 to this point in time, and we transferred that over to our reserves and discretionary reserves. And then we also spent $1,170,000 on capital assets this year. And that's less than the total of 1.317 million because some of the capital assets were water related, so they were paid for by the users of the water system. So we see that in the 1.46, that number there. Okay, so overall, right now we're sitting at an unallocated surplus at the end of the year of $274,000 in the general fund. Okay. The second column here, that's the water column. And this has been tracked since early on. We got some information from the municipality early on to get opening numbers years ago. But there is a little bit of uncertainty going back as to whether this is a completely accurate number for the water, just because the records pre-amalgamation weren't as good as the records after amalgamation in all aspects of that. So overall, the best thing about this year is, and this number has changed slightly from the one that was sent out to you, because we did find that this $82,000 number here belonged in sewer instead of being in the water. So we changed this from 122,000 to 40,000 and put the $82,000 over into the sewer to properly reflect the government grants coming in. But overall, the nice thing is that the water had a surplus this year of $500,000. And the water system is now in a positive of $51,000. So it's paid back the money it's needed in the past to deal with capital asset additions and what have you, and it's now in a positive position. So all these years that we've been trying to get it there, we finally got it there. The sewer this year, with the change that we just mentioned, it had a surplus of $148,000. So we have dropped the deficit in the sewer department from $3.131 million down to just under $3 million at $2,982,000. And everybody remember, may or may not remember that the main reason for that deficit in the sewer is due to the LC built a number of years ago, that they were hoping for some growth at that point in time that would pay for the residual part of it, and we just haven't seen that at this point in time. So that's a legacy cost that's been sitting there that we've been trying to retire over time. But it does take quite a bit when we're looking at the revenues that we currently have coming through there. The other big item this year is in the municipal drains. We can see that the municipal drains actually had a deficit this year of $1,796,687. We did have some revenues of about $294,000 come through there this year. But the big thing was we did $2,090,000 worth of municipal drain work. So that's anticipated that that drain work, once completed, will be billed out in 2020, and the appropriate government grants applied for, as well as billed out to the individual homeowner or landowners to recover those amounts in due course. So that's more of a timing, and because of accounting rules, we're not allowed to recognize the revenue until it's actually billed out to the individual landowners. So there's always been a kind of timing difference for that, and that's why this year that portion is significantly higher, in that we have a deficit now of $2,255,000 in the municipal drains. Okay, our discretionary reserve funds with allocations made during the year, those are up this year by $461,000. And our reserves are up by $1,786,000. So overall, we have a very good reserve fund balance, currently sitting at just over $14 million, sitting at $14,324,788. So that's a great buffer that we have to deal with future costs coming through the municipality. Okay, and then the last column here shows the breakdown by individual departments of the amortization of the capital assets, and does reflect a little bit of a gain that we had on the disposals, and shows the incoming new assets purchased, as well as the proceeds from the sale of the assets, which gets transferred back over to the general fund. So overall, our net surplus across all departments this year was $836,000, which ties back to the financial statements that we previously looked at. Once again, as I said previously, a very good year overall. We've gotten the water back to a positive perspective. We still have some funds sitting there that I believe at this point in time, Tracy, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
So Tracy, if I'm not mistaken, we are prepared to leave the 274 sitting there in surplus so they can be used for projects in 2020.
Yeah, we should probably do a recommendation that we move it to the working reserve.
Because then that can be utilized as needed in the next year.
Because that is part of our $550,000 grant.
Sure. Which is that? Tracy, you lost me on that. What is part of that grant?
So after my transfer of the reserve that we did earlier, we
Yes.
still have another 270, almost 275,000. I want to transfer that to the working reserve because it's part of the $550,000 grant that we
Okay.
have some jobs earmarked for.
Okay, thank you. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
So Jackie, how do we go about doing that?
Well, what do we want to just wait till the end of the presentation and then we
Sure.
can
Yep.
get the
Yep.
You're doing a report afterwards, Tracy, I see, for the annual statement, pardon me, for the reserve fund balances, and can that be done at that time, Jackie, or we do it at the end of this?
I think we would do it at the end of where the financial statements are going to be
Okay.
considered for acceptance. We'll do a motion up in that area.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Because what I would recommend is we do a motion there and say basically that if you are in the position to approve the statements, they'd be approved subject to a transfer of 274,000 to the reserve.
Okay,
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
yep, thank you.
So is there
Any other
any
questions?
questions with regards to the surplus?
Any questions from staff or from council? I'm sorry. No questions? I'm not hearing any. Okay,
So I'm just going to switch back over to the financial statements for 1 second here. I do want to show you the overall schedule at this point in time in the notes of where we're looking at for the overall surplus breakdown and also what's in our reserves currently. So note 12 shows the breakdowns of what the reserves currently are and the specific purposes that have been set aside. So we can see that there are some, changes from year to year. Middlesex Fire being up, our contingency fund is down this year over last year. Our work capital is down this year over last year, just based on usages throughout the year. Our capital project reserve is up over last year, just because of monies that weren't spent in the current year that were set aside for capital projects. And then we also have this other section, which is some other ones that were set aside by different means and methodologies over the years. So that gives us down to our 14,324,000 total reserves. And then basically right now, this is showing our fund, note 13 shows our fund balances. So right now we're sitting at 274,338 for reduction in general taxation. So based on if a motion is passed, we take that down to 0, which would then increase our total reserves and reserve funds by the same amount. For recovery from user charges, that's sitting at 5.187. And that's a combination of our water, sewer, and municipal drain amounts. So that totals $5.187 million. And then we have our invested in tangible capital assets, which is our hard assets of $55,554,000 that we see saw previously. Okay. One of the other things that we do have in this report, we keep on going through the different segmented reporting, and there is a breakdown if you want to see where the different breakdowns of user charges by department, government grants by department. We also get into our expenditures by department breakdown between salaries, materials, contracted services, and other, and compare that to the prior year as well. But as I said, very consistent on the expenditure side from year to year. And then we keep on going over, we have a breakdown of what makes up the $55 million in capital assets. And then keep on going over, and we do have a second auditor's report in here. This is the auditor's report with regards to the cemetery trust funds. So once again, we are in a position to offer a clean opinion on the cemetery trust funds. They're very minor in the overall context of the municipality. They are up slightly over last year by about $10,000. And primarily that is due to just some revenues coming in, some new plots being sold, and some beautification revenue coming through, and a little bit of interest on those funds. So not much going on in there, but it is a report that is required to be issued for North Middlesex. Any questions on that one?
Questions from council? No, I'm not hearing any. Mike, go ahead.
Okay, well, that's all I had for you guys tonight. Is there any other general questions that council has with regards to the audit or anything else going on?
I did have one specifically on our water equipment that went back a couple. It was a large increase. It was from like almost doubled. It was to 1.4 million.
Where did you see that?
Sorry, when there, North Middlesex water equipment was 789, and this year it's 1.4. What is that? Is that for lines that we're doing, or why would that? What's that number represent?
Do you want to speak to that, Mike, or do you want me to?
You can speak to that, Tracy. You probably have it on the top of your head with having your reserve conversation later on.
So that was the built in the 2019 water budget was a transfer to reserves for 453,000, I believe.
Okay, that was for the transfers. That's what's.
Yes,
that's what,
yeah.
that's, okay.
Yeah. So.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions from council? I'm not hearing any. Maybe we can get the screen back.
So we'll take that off.
Yeah.
So one of my last comments is, I really want to thank Tracy and her team for working with us through the audit. We started the audit when we could actually come out to visit you in Park Hill and get things started. And of course, right in the middle of things, everything locked down, and we had to go through phone calls and emails and what have you to finish off the audit. So I do have to thank her and her team for keeping with us as we went through these changing times. And it's definitely a learning curve for all of us to get through this process and what have you. So and being her first time through the audit with us on top of that. So thank you, Tracy, for all your help through this. And I'm sure Aaron much appreciates all your help getting through this.
Well said, Mike, I think. So, okay, so is there any other questions on the audit? We do have a recommendation in front of us, plus there's a motion as well. Do you have that? Can you read that motion, Jackie?
Thank you. So, Your Worship, the motion will be amended on the agenda to read to accept the 2019 financial statements as presented, subject to the transfer of the surplus of 274,000 to working capital.
Okay, any questions on that, anyone? Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Nickel would move it. Councillor Keogh second. Any other discussion on that? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Aaron, for all your work. And I'm sure it was a tough year this year, or certainly a different year to do the audits. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Now, Michael, do I need to turn this back over to you, or have you taken control back?
No, I think I can just withdraw co-host. You're good.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Well, thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Bye.
Next, we're going to go into department reports. Jonathan Lampman, Infrastructure Supervisor, meeting to consider engineers.
Your Worship, members of council, what you have in front of you is the meeting to consider 3 different drains. The Brown Rose drain, branch A and B, the Peters drain, and the Turner Eagleson branches C, D, E, I, and J. So the recommendation is that be it resolved that council accepts the final report for the Brown Rose drain, branch A and B, dated February 11th, 2020, prepared by R. Dobbin Engineering, and that council accept the final report for the Peters drain, dated May 21st, 2020, prepared by R. Dobbin Engineering, and that council accept the final report for the Turner Eagleson drain, branches C, D, E, I, and J, dated May 21st, 2020. So what we did was we had meetings on June 30th, I believe it was just last week. And did all 3 drains in the same day. So everybody that had any concerns, questions regarding the design and so on and so forth came in. Didn't end up voicing much. They wanted to see a couple little things here and there. There was no objections to the drains. Therefore, this is in front of you for your consideration and approval. So I'll leave it at that unless there's any other questions or concerns.
Any questions from council on these drains? No questions? Jackie, do you want to speak on this? Yep.
So I just want to clarify that there's going to be 3 different motions. So how they're listed on the agenda, we'll be looking for a mover and a seconder on each of the drains separately.
All right, so we need a mover on the Brown Rose drain. Councillor Moyer, Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Next one is the Peters drain. Deputy Mayor Cornelison, Councillor Nicol, all in favor? Carried. And the last one is the Turner Eagleson drain. Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, John. Tracy, you're next, and that's the 2019 annual statement for development charges.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is the annual update to council on the 2019 year-end balance of our development charges. Under Section 43 of the Development Charge Act, the treasurer is required to provide council with a development charge financial statement and make it available to the public and to the province if requested. There is an attached schedule which shows our opening balances as of 2019, the total collected under each envelope, and the amount of interest earned under each envelope. Is there any questions?
Any questions on it from council? No questions? You have a recommendation? Councillor Moyer. Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Thanks, Tracy. You're up, I think, next again for 2019 reserve and reserve fund balances.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is also for informational purposes. It's a 29 year-end balances of the reserves and reserve funds, as well as any amounts that are committed out of the reserves from 2019 but have not been spent. This is just a little more in depth from what you just got from Michael. So the reserve and reserve funds are set aside to offset future capital needs, financial obligations, and other cost pressures we might see. The reserves are basically an allocation of accumulated net revenue and generally used either to ease the impact of fluctuating operating costs and revenue or to accumulate funds for future or contingent liabilities. For example, the election reserve was established to accumulate funds from the annual tax levy to smooth out the taxation effect for an operating expense that occurs only every 4 years. The reserve funds are set aside for specific purposes, either by authority or by law or by legislation, such as the building department reserve. So there is an appendix attached to the report that summarizes the year-end balances with along with the committed funds. Is there any questions on that report or on that schedule?
Any questions on it? Yeah, Deputy Mayor Cornelison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I have a question on the East Williams Bridge Reserve for $595,000. Now that is prior to any grants that the municipality is receiving. Is that correct?
Right. That balance includes the 266,000 that I put into that reserve from my report earlier. So there's no grants. The grant that Jonathan got for us does not include it in that amount.
Okay.
That's,
so I guess
that's just the municipality's money.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was just going to say, so each year we have to submit the financial information return, and the ministry uses the data collected from that for all kinds of purposes, including our grant funding and performance measures. So according to the latest performance measures provided by the ministry, our reserve balances continue to be at a level of low financial risk, and we are in line with our municipal comparators. So that's a good news story, I guess.
Any other questions? No other questions? We have a recommendation. Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Councillor McClinchy. Is that right, Doreen? Yes? Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Tracy. Next, Brandon Drew is Facilities Rec Manager, the 2020 Parks and Recreation, the community survey results. Who's doing that? Are you doing it, Mike? Okay, go ahead.
Yes, through your mayor and the members of council, you have the 2020 Parks and Recreation Survey report. It's an information report. The recommendation is to receive. We just wanted council aware that it should read that it's going out next Monday, July 13th. The purpose of the survey is obviously a general purpose to identify areas of improvement and needs identified through the community. And secondly, we'll be pairing it with conditional assessments on our facilities done this year to kind of set priorities, the community priorities against it, to ultimately develop a asset management plan in the future. So we're putting together those building blocks to build out a plan that fits the community needs and staff needs, and from a financial standpoint as well. So it's like I said, pretty straightforward survey that goes over demographics, facilities, outdoor recreation, recreational programming, and kind of a moving forward priority setting. There'll also be a report to follow with the results of the survey, and that will be forwarded to council. If there's any questions, let me know.
Mayor Rob, you're muted.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Mike, I really like the survey. I think it's going to be very informative and whatnot, and I think it's a good long-range planning. My question is, some time ago, we often were spoken to about a master recreation plan. Is this part of that, or is this taking place of that, or how is that impacting with the master recreation plan?
The main priority is a asset management plan, but yes, we could use these pieces to develop an in-house parks and recreation plan. There is some training that Brandon and I are taking this year to develop in-house parks and recreation plans. So these are all large components to be used for different plans.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Great question, Adrian. Any other questions? No other questions? Motion to accept the report. Councillor Nicol, Deputy Mayor Cornelison, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Our next is the passing of accounts.
Thank you, Your Worship. We are recommending the bills and accounts amounting to $1,882,303.63 be approved for payment. Are there any questions on the accounts payable?
Questions from council. Deputy Mayor Cornelison, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Tracy, I just noticed that we were paid 3 months and once for the OPP policing. Is there, did they just not bill us, or do we always pay quarterly? I thought we paid monthly.
No, they were very slow getting us the first few bills.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No other questions? Need a motion to pay the accounts. Councillor McClinchy and Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Committee reports. I don't think we need to go through. Is there any committees that want to do a report? I know we have still canceled.
Mayor Rob, I wouldn't mind sharing some information on the Asaba Bayfield.
By all means, go ahead.
So rest of council may not know, but Gold Leaf has been approved by Asaba Bayfield to proceed with their building in Park Hill. The Asaba Bayfield will be beginning site visits to issue permits shortly. The other thing is that I thought was interesting is that the Asaba Bayfield is also engaging MEU for their enforcement policies as well. And I told them that we were very pleased with their efforts here in North Middlesex, and I thought it was a good choice. That's it.
Okay. Any questions for Adrian? None? Okay. Is there any other committees? Did somebody, Jackie, did you like to speak a little bit on the policy committee? Because we are wanting to get that going.
Sure. So staff have been just initiating some discussions internally that we're going to have a meeting later this month just to get ourselves reorganized. And I believe I sent an email out to the policy committee, just giving a heads up that we would like to initiate the first meeting August 20th and perhaps meet monthly for the next few months just to try and get some policies back on track. Permitted during our workload as well, but yeah, so we do feel with the size of the room and the amount of people on the committee that we could safely proceed with initiating that committee again.
Okay, and that's just for an information for the rest of council, because there are some policies that we have to get looking at and move forward on. So thanks, Jackie. Is there any other committees? No other committees to speak? Next is correspondence. The first is an invitation from the North Middlesex District High School commencement exercise. I think it's pretty broad right now. It's anticipated to proceed in the fall. The action right now is just to receive an attendance confirmation. And I think at this time, we should just say, yes, someone will attend for sure. Go ahead, Councillor McClinchy.
I will attend if no one else wants to.
Okay.
Put my name down.
All right. Sounds good. So there's that one. Then Town of Bracebridge, motion support to establish a municipal financial assistance program. That's receive and file. Chatham-Kent has 2 letters to Premier Ford in support of the government's commission on long-term care and requirement for government to consider recommendation of needs of residents in long-term care identified by associated agencies. And that's a receive and file. I don't know if you've all read those letters. They're actually pretty good letters going forward. The last one is
Your worship.
Go ahead. Yep.
Councilor Nicola has a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question on those letters. I really thought the first one was really, really, really good.
Yeah.
And I wondered can we support the first letter and not the second letter, or is it parcel? It's all one parcel.
It's 2 separate letters. Jackie, you want to speak on that?
It is, they were just done a little bit differently than they didn't come through as requests for motion support like some other motions did. So I did bring them forward in correspondence. I mean, council can certainly pass a motion if they would, to endorse the letter that was provided. So basically what you do for other ones, it's just a support of that motion. I don't send it out to all the ministries and everything like normally if it was a motion we were preparing and having for consideration, but council can certainly support and endorse that letter if they choose.
So I would like to make a motion that we endorse that first letter.
Letter 1?
Yes, please.
Letter 1. Is there a seconder for that? Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Keogh, you're seconding that? Any other discussion on it? In favor? Carried. All right. Thanks, Joan. Anything else on those? The last one is service proposal opportunity from Second Wind Recycling, expanded polystyrene recycling services. That's just a receive and file for that one. Other and urgent business, any other business? Go ahead, Jonathan. Jonathan first, and then I'll get you, Adrian.
So I'll pass this over to the facilities manager. I have one more discussion piece, and so does he. So we were informed by the library branch this week that they will be commencing a pickup and drop off feature at the Park Hill Library, which seems to be a 2-day event. I'm not too sure about the hours, and of course, this is subject to change. This will commence either on the week of July 13th or the week of July 20th. We'll give more of an update as we see it progress, but it's nice to see that we have counterparts coming back to provide services to the residents. So again, this is only a pickup and drop-off service. This isn't anything inside the building.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else on that? Mike, did you want to speak on that? No?
No, not to that. I have a separate item.
Okay, Adrian, you go ahead. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My question is for Jonathan, and that is, what is the status of the Popper Hill Bridge? I know we referred to it earlier because there's some grant money announced last year. Where are we at with that?
So we are out for tender with the contractors. We posted to Bedingo. We've got all of our front end approvals, and we've been in constant consultation with ICIP and OMAFRA, who's administering it. We've not received any bills yet. Spree doesn't invoice us yet, but we are closing next Thursday for a contractor. So following council meeting, you will be seeing a recommendation for a contractor for the bridge.
Thank you.
What would the timeframes be on that, Jonathan? Do you know, any idea? Like, are we talking this year still being able to get at it?
Yeah. So yeah, I think the intention is late summer into the fall, and then we'll see a bit of a lull until the spring when they can kind of button everything up.
Okay. Okay.
Well, yeah, we've opened the schedule up to the contractors, because if we hold it too tight, they'll just price it. They'll just price it higher, right?
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay. Would the road be closed over the winter then, Jonathan?
Yeah, but as soon as we start, it will be closed, because we have to drive, I think it's like 14 piles, 150 feet deep. So once we start that, there'll be no passing either way. But we'll put up traffic. It's part of the contract to put up all the MTO traffic, book 7 stuff.
Okay.
Tracy, you wanted to speak on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the grant funding that Adrian was questioning. So that grant will come in as Jonathan puts in draws. So as he starts spending money, we'll receive the grants. So that's why you're not seeing it anywhere on any of our accounts. So,
okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Mike, you had an item?
Yes, through your mayor to members of council. I just wanted to quickly inform you about a small little project that came up. A resident had reached out to Brian and a few staff about the inclusion of a beach volleyball court. And I think what happened is she proceeded to post it on Facebook, and I think Brian received a whole bunch of requests. So we just looked into it very quickly, and this is something we can accomplish for under $2,000. And if it's not used a lot, we can remove it easily. And if it is successful, we will consider maybe a spot in Nelson Craig as well. But we're just going to run a pilot project basically behind the skate park across from the arena. And we can do it very cheaply and pretty quickly. The only timing would be waiting on the net order. So I just wanted to inform council if there's any issues or questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions on it?
No.
No other questions? Great, Mike. Thanks. Any other business? One thing I would bring for next meeting, and I think this would be to both Jonathans, but we have a lot of things happening, like with tenders and different things. By next meeting, a lot of that will come forward to us, right? So that we'll actually have a better timeline on what's happening. Is that right?
It's going to be in the next council meeting or the council meeting after that. They're going to be very heavy engineering related. We went through the tender award for the contract for the wastewater pollution control plant. We'll have the Denfield line coming ahead, and we'll also have the Poplar Bridge moving ahead as well. So some construction rather than engineering now, but yes, we'll have some of that be coming ahead shortly.
The other thing I'm hoping to hear from, that we're hoping to hear from fairly soon, is about the Blacks Bridge as well. As to, I know the engineer doesn't have that information yet, but we're waiting to get that too. That's another one that's sitting there that we're wondering about. But I just wanted council to know that, because there is a lot of things going on that we haven't really had updates, but it's all coming forward pretty quickly to us. So if there's no other business, communications, including the county council.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Not a great deal's happening at the county right now. We're moving ahead slowly. Folks, this last week we did some work on the strategic plan, which we're meeting again a week from yesterday, so next Tuesday. Other than that, Mayor Ropp, I don't know if you have anything you wish to add?
No, I think the one thing I think most people probably saw it in the news that the London Middlesex Health Unit is making a change that Dr. Mackey will stay in charge of the health side of the health unit, but there'll be a new CEO, a new administrator. And so they've just made that change. I know the board made that change. So just to let people know if you hadn't heard that. I don't think there's anything else either, Adrian. I think it's been pretty quiet, but we do have a meeting next Tuesday. Council meetings next Tuesday, because they're the same way. They're having trouble getting some of their planning going forward as well. So I don't think is there any questions for the county from anyone? No? We don't have a closed meeting, so reading of the bylaws.
Bylaw 26 is the Brown Rose Drain. Bylaw 45 is the Peters Drain. Bylaw 46, Turner Eagleson Drain. And Bylaw 47 is your confirming bylaw. And we're looking for first and second reading on all bylaws.
Councillor McClinchy and Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried.
And we're looking for third and final on bylaw 47 only.
Councillor Nicol, Councillor Moyer, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. I think that's it. We're just looking for a motion to adjourn. Councillor McClinchy and Councillor Keogh. He almost beat you, Doreen. He almost got you that time. Have a good evening, everyone. Stay cool.
Good
See you
night.
guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.